Okay, so welcome to this week's episode of The Path Less Chosen, the podcast showing the careers they don't teach you about in school. I'm Sol.
I'm Jamie.
So today we have Amaury on, who is co-founder of Circular, which is a smart device which you wear as a ring, tracks metrics like health, sleep, fitness. Really cool idea. Many of you will be familiar with the Whoop of the Aura, and it's in a similar field as that. So really excited to be getting him on. We know it's already a pretty developed project. He's got almost 4,000 backers, has raised almost £800,000 of grant money. Really looking to push this as to being one of the most successful smart wearables in the market. So Jamie, a field that I'm very interested in, but what you looking to take from today?
Hopefully he'll provide some more quality than your TikToks. But I think what will be really interesting with him is he's obviously grown up in France, so slightly different in terms of his upbringing. And I know he had the idea for this business from when he was 13 years old. And, he's now been going for over 7 years. So the time he's dedicated to it, well over a decade, I think it should be fascinating to hear because he must have learned a lot along the way. So hopefully he'll share all of that with us. And I am looking forward to it.
Amaury, great to have you on. And thank you very much for joining us on The Path Less Chosen. Could we just get a very brief summary of what you're up to now?
Yeah, so we're making smart rings, but the basic idea of our company called Circular is, now it's a bit of a corny slogan, but democratizing personal health. And what that means really is being able to make understandable a lot of biometrics that the general public doesn't really know about and knows how to use. So it's really transforming data that is complex into actionable insights. And we wanted to make that into two things really. One, with a product that you can wear every day, and two, leveraging AI to be able to crunch numbers and have real world benefits, not just, raw metrics that people don't understand. So that's what we're trying to crack. And we're working very hard to make it happen.
So just develop a little bit more. What is a smart ring for anyone who doesn't know?
Yeah, the easiest way I describe it is a smartwatch in a ring form factor. It's miniaturizing everything we know today, from vibration motors to how to track your heart rate and more complex data into a tiny little wearable device that you can wear all the time. So smart rings was a no-brainer for me to get started with the first product. It's a bit more accurate than wristwatches or wrist-worn devices. And people wear it all the time. That's the biggest differentiator. People usually wear the rings during nighttime, whereas wrist-worn devices, not so much.
So obviously with you, it's slightly different from other guests we've had. You grew up and were brought up in France, right? So tell us a little bit about what that was like and maybe what the culture is in terms of career prospects when you're growing up.
Wow, yeah. So absolutely. I've lived my whole life in France. I think where I can really tell a story is around the more entrepreneurial side of things in France. It might be different in different parts of the world, but I really had a pretty basic education in France. Started in science and then went to a business school, majored in marketing, worked at a bank, worked at mostly luxurious brands companies such as Louis Vuitton and Hermes for a couple of years. And then decided to start Circular. And in France, I'd say we have less possibilities to get finance easily with a startup. The ecosystem is a bit more harsh. So if you want to succeed with a startup, you need to really get into it. So I started working on the sites to make money. And then it's only when you're kind of successful that people come to you, as anywhere really. But I'd say in France, there's one good thing. It's that you get some support, at least from public banks and systems that, all French pay for. So we get some of those benefits. But it's probably, I'd say, a bit more difficult to get started when you have nothing from the beginning. Yeah.
So just going back to when you were talking about the working in the banking and working with the luxury brands, did you hate that, or did you like it and see it as a valuable experience? Would love to know what your thoughts were while you were there.
No, I loved it actually. Hermes, for example, it's a great brand. They have a great culture, and I did want to stay, but I had this idea for the smart ring since I was 13, and I knew that I wanted to start this startup, so there was nothing keeping me from that. So So really, after a year, I quit and I told everybody I was going to launch the smart ring, and they even supported me. So no, I loved it, but I had to do circular.
And how did your mindset work when you were in those banks, but you had this childhood dream of creating this circular ring? Were you kind of looking out the window and thinking about your life when you could have the ring, or were you head down knowing exactly what you were doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And at the beginning, I thought it was going to take probably a year or two to get a ring on my finger working perfectly. Obviously, it took 5 years, so way more. But yeah, at the time, absolutely. And I put every effort into my work so that I could get some money to try to start the business. And yeah, I tried a bunch of things at the time, but every thought I had was towards circular. So I started investing in cryptos in like 2016, and it went up, it crashed, and I tried everything, and hopefully in the end I had a little bit of cash on the side so that I could start circular.
So to put yourself into the shoes then of anyone listening who might be in a similar position than you were back then in 2016, that has this idea, that knows they definitely want to do it at some point, but they're working in the corporate world at the time, what point do they then make that leap to then quit like you did and move on and then get the startup off the ground? And were you working on it at the side up until that point? Or was it something that you quit and then it took off from there?
So I've been asked a couple times before. I definitely do not recommend jumping into an entrepreneurial experience and quitting your job straight away. You need preparation before you make the change, even if it's an idea you have for a long time. So, and it's different for every project. Ours is a hardware project, so there's a lot involved into making hardware. It's more difficult than just some software, even though huge respects for any founders, of course. But you need to have more cash from the start. You need to set up production lines. You need to get support from the community, and hardware is less funded than just software. So really, to make the jump into hardware, which is my experience, I had to make sure that people actually wanted to buy the product and get a bit of cash before starting. So in order to do all of this, we worked probably a year and a half before I quit at Hermes, which was my last job. And during that year and a half, we mostly were focused on prototyping, so making our first products, even though they didn't work perfectly and were not great looking. At least we had prototypes we could show to some banks or any sort of potential partner. And also we're prepared for a Kickstarter campaign. So this is mostly the first step to finance a hardware consumer-focused startup, is a crowdfunding campaign. And so we put all of our efforts in there. So, we managed to get some grants here and there and a little bit of cash to be able to pay for the marketing for this Kickstarter campaign. And once we launched the campaign, this is when I quit Hermes and fully focused on circular.
Obviously, you just mentioned cash and financing as one of the biggest things. But right at the beginning, were there also other big barriers to entry?
Yeah, I guess I have mostly one major barrier to entry into getting into something like this. Really, for us, it was the hardware part of things that were the most complex. So we started with the Kickstarter campaign. We had a little bit of money, and then comes the time when you actually need to deliver all these people who pre-ordered. And the biggest thing at the time was finding the right partner. And it may not seem like something super important, but as a hardware startup, if you don't have the right partner to produce your device, they will grab as much cash from you as possible and leave you just standing there with not a lot to continue your business. And they don't care really, because usually these partners, now here I'm talking about EMSs, so the production facilities which will assemble electronics onto your electronic boards so that you can package it and send it to customers. These people usually work with big brands, so in the automotive industries, all of these big industries, so they don't really care about how much they price their clients, even if you're a startup. And we had this terrible experience, which was reflected into our delivery timelines, but we changed manufacturers twice. And so to me, that was the biggest thing. We lost probably 2 years in the process because we changed twice. And each time you need to change manufacturer, you need to set up a new production line. It takes a couple of months. You need to pay new NREs, so non-recurring costs, to set up the testings and all these things. So if you know anybody in your network that can recommend you, that has experiences in the hardware world, you need to call him or her and ask about who is the best suited to make these electronics production facilities. And so, yeah, if I called up somebody that had experience at the time and he recommended me a certain EMS, would probably save me a lot of money and time.
So many interesting aspects of that, but the one that stands out for me there is you're talking to manufacturers, you're talking to hardware, electronic developers. How the hell do you work out where to go, who to speak to?
Yeah. So yeah, good to point out, because the way we started is pretty crazy and naive. But yeah, we had zero experience in hardware. Come from a business background, so it makes no sense if you see me today and see that I'm doing circling. It makes no sense that I'm doing this today. But it's the passion, of course, that brought me here. But how did we get started with talking to people and the right people in production? Well, really, at the time, we looked at where others produce their devices, competing brands, but also hardware brands in general that we looked up to. If you dig a bit, you will find where and who their partners are. So it's mostly, just looking online and trying to get where it comes from, where it's shipped from. There are reports online about, you need to you need certificates for your products in order to be able to sell in this country. So you'll find the information if you dig. And we started there. And from there, we started talking to some people making products that are kind of similar to ours. All of them want to onboard you. So we made that mistake where we found this partner and absolutely they wanted to work with us. We started working with us. It was with them. It was terrible. And then at the time, it's when we needed to order some raw materials to be able to send to this manufacturer. And these people know people in the hardware space because they've been there their whole life, and so they recommend you some other EMSs. And just like that, we end up having some network in the space. And in the end, we finally found the perfect manufacturer. But we definitely made some mistakes at the beginning.
But you also mentioned there that you come from a business background. And I think what's quite interesting for people to hear is, we hear about the Richard Bransons of the world that had no academic background whatsoever. And you talking there about you lie more in the business side of things. What extent do you think like it's an academic intellectual brain that allows you to create a good company and a good business versus you have to have that specific business mindset?
That's a complicated question to answer. We coming from my business background, especially the marketing one, I think the mindset I've always had is I kind of knew what, of course, in all humility, what people wanted and wanted to see. And marketing a consumer product is as important. It's not as important as the product itself, but for the company's success is as important. You can have a great product and market it terribly. It's not going to work. And so you need both sides. And so our founding team is actually half technical, half non-technical, and most of our team today are engineers. But the founding team, to me, needed to be the perfect mix between both worlds. So I really wanted in this team to have both of these worlds together. So to me, it's vastly important that you have part of this mindset from the start. So it's definitely important. Yeah.
My follow-on from that is, how do you feel in a company where the technical part is a very important aspect of the product? Do you feel shut off on that conversation?
Yeah, at the beginning, to be very honest, it felt like I didn't really have my place in starting something like this because, you're afraid of learning a lot of new things at the same time. And the more the time passes, the more I understood that it was very important to have this business background. And if you're a non-technical founder, even starting something as technical as a hardware company, you definitely have all of your place in a tech startup. A lot of tech guys and engineers do not have the business mindset at all, in the sense that they just look at solving problems that are technical. And it might seem very logical, but on a day-to-day basis, that means engineers working with you that just are interested in solving the tiny little details in their code, which doesn't necessarily add any value whatsoever to the company. And sometimes they're very blind to that. And having, a direct conversation with consumers, with your customers, and knowing exactly how and what they want and how you want to put that into your product is something that is super important. So yeah, I did feel out of my depth at sometimes, but number one, non-technical founders are super important, and number two, you learn over time.
And you never thought about quitting. You always stayed on to that 13-year-old dream.
Yeah, no, I've never thought about quitting 1 second. Definitely complicated, and we burned through some cash. We need to raise funds, and we almost crashed like probably 5 times since the start. But I've never thought about crashing. Like, even if I see cash going down in down in the bank account, I've never seen myself with the company crashing. And I think that's what keeps you going. It's that you don't think anything will happen to you, and so automatically I start looking for funds, even though I know nobody and I have nobody in my network at the beginning. I contact a lot of people, a lot of funds, a lot of business angels, and somewhere it just lands, and you get an opportunity. I raised a little bit of funds with some business angels, and you start over, and you're happy, and you can continue your journey.
I think what's really important as well for anyone listening is to understand that you started this journey back in 2016, 2017. And so for anyone like thinking about that, you can't just discover like the next Tesla overnight. So tell us a little bit about, over the last 7-8 years, how do you stay motivated, organized, determined during all of those difficult times to then get to where you are today, where you're getting closer and closer to making it what eventually you want it to be?
Yeah. So first of all, all big companies, before getting out of the shadows, probably spend 6-7 years grinding every day and going through every difficulty whatsoever. This is true for every big company, and it's frustrating mostly for some business angels if you're lucky to have some business angels by your side, because they don't necessarily see and know all of that, and nobody really does until you're into it. But yeah, how do I stay motivated after all this time? It's frustrating because I always thought naively from the start that it would take 2 years to get this tiny device on the market. It's so small, it's so easy to make, and in 2 years we're done. Obviously, that was not the case, but I still see some little wins over time. Like, our first version was terrible. I have no shame saying this. Our first version we shipped to our backers was actually not great. We had so many issues. The ring wasn't fully waterproof. We thought it was, but it wasn't in the end when we started shipping. So we had a lot of people complaining about it. We had to replace a bunch of rings. It was terrible. And so over time, it takes so much more than anticipated. But in the end, we know that it's possible. Why? Because others do it. And very, very frankly, we're in a mindset where we want to be winners, and there's nothing stopping us from thinking that, like, if others do it, we can do it, and we can do better. That's what we think. Obviously, it's not how we talk to everybody. We always want to learn. We are always super humble about what we do, but this is the mentality I think you need to have. It's, well, if others do it, I can, and why should I not be better, if not at least as good as others?
Even if you have the most perfect product in the world, if no one knows about it, they're not going to buy it. So let's go into the marketing side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Marketing, it's, as you said it, and as I said at the beginning, super important. Once you, at least for a hardware company, but you can make the same parallel with software companies, once you're confident enough with a good product that you had tested it with a lot of consumers, and you feel confident about it, then comes the time where you need to scale. And to scale, of course, marketing is the most important thing. So if you have your production ready and you're ready to make ads online, there's a couple of things. If you're a hardware company like us, of course, having it tested is the most important thing. So we would send a bunch of our new devices to people, a lot of times for free as well. So these people would be athletes or people naturally interested in what we do. The biggest thing I always say to all of these people supporting us, or me wanting to give them a ring, is, I'm going to gift you a ring, but I don't want it to be forced in any way whatsoever. If you want to wear it, that's fine. If you don't want to wear it, that's fine as well. I just want people that are happy with our product, that wear it with great pleasure, and that actually get some benefit out of it. And so that's how most of our partnerships today are. It's just people who are happy wearing our device. And a lot of people actually do it for free and market it for free because they like what we do, and they feel a sense of being part of the team, also giving us feedback. And some of them, we value their feedback. So they say, hey, I would like this way inside of the app, or this is not working. The next day we fix it, they're super happy, and they just continue naturally marketing it, giving us feedback. And this will, in the end, if you get one of them, a big guy, to talk about you, you'll have messages from other bigger guys or smaller guys, but people who have influence message you and say, hey, I see that this guy is testing your device. Can I test it as well? And we do the same process all over again. And in the end, you just have a network of influencers that talk about your product. And to me, the most natural way of doing it is like that, and it's the most interesting for us. But I think if you're starting and you don't have a bunch of cash, your best bet would be just contacting a lot of people, which isn't necessarily a good principle in general, but nicely you just send across an email, say, hey, do you want to test our product? I'll give it to you for free, and then your feedback is super valuable to us, and you can just really get started like that, I think. Now, of course, it doesn't apply to every product. Some products are a harder sell than others, but we're not targeting people that, I don't know, are in the finance industry. Like, of course, we're contacting people in these sports industries and wellness industries. So if you target a list of people, you send out messages, you're kind of nice in your approach, I think you can get going like that.
I've been banging on to Jamie about his sleep, but I'm not sure if he'll count as enough of an athlete to get a free trial. But talking about the getting people on board, we see you've recently got Grosjean on, so we'd love to know how you got in contact with him.
Yeah. So in terms of getting involved into our adventure, it's super naturally. We look at it, who, and sometimes we need to be lucky in seeing that, but who wears our competitors' devices. And a lot of those who wear our competitors' devices have frustrations. And so if we're lucky enough to get in contact with that person, we're like, hey, do you like your current product? What would you like to see that, if you were the maker of this product, here in our case, a smart ring, what would you like to see? And they instantly feel involved at this point in time, and that's where they get interested in your product. In his case, typically he wore a competitor device, and his agent came to us. We didn't even outreach to him at all, and we've seen that happen over the course of the past couple of months a lot. People come to us pretty naturally, and athletes, especially in our industry, they love tracking all of their metrics, and they will be naturally interested in a device like ours and reach out to us if they see the potential in the device.
So I think what's come across massively is obviously you're very passionate about this, and ultimately that's the case with a lot of people that go into business, is that they're doing something they love, and they love to do it for free. But the reality of life is, of course, that there has to be money at some point. So I think it's an important question to ask, and as long as you don't mind answering, how does it work along the way? You mentioned you had like financial grants, etc., but how do you make sure that you're financially stable during that time, where it's during the preparation phases and things are maybe slightly difficult, and then also looking to the future as well as a business founder?
So for the early days, if I need to answer from the start here of the circular journey, how do we make sure that we're financially prepared for what's to come? Again, I'm going to be talking as a hardware founder, but hardware is definitely more cash. How to say it takes way more cash to start. As I said at the beginning, you need to set up production lines, etc. So a Kickstarter campaign, even if you do very well, will not suffice. And we know that. Getting the first quotes from our manufacturing partners, you should have seen our reaction. It's like, wow, it's so much money. And what are they going to do exactly? And then you start talking with agencies at the beginning to make the app, which in turn we internalized. Agencies as well are just, cat grabbing people, looking at putting as many project managers onto your project as possible, and getting as many people involved for as long as possible. And they don't even hide it. Most of these people working by the hour will make sure that they get the most cash out of you as possible, especially if there's good news surrounding your company. So after the Kickstarter, everybody knew we had a little bit of money. They want to maximize their gains out of you. So of course we kind of saw through it. We wanted to make sure we were paying for the right amount of work. So a lot of negotiations. But also, as I said, in our case, the Kickstarter was definitely not enough. So we went on raising funds super quickly afterwards. And the Kickstarter was the beginning of that. I'd say from the first phases of the company, how do we plan financially? Well, it's a bit complicated to answer by the book. It's more on a case-to-case basis. But for us, we know exactly what we need to do to make this ring. We need a manufacturer. We need an app, at least a first version of the app up and running, some parts of the backing up and running. And from there, we try to minimize cost as much as possible while still looking at a lot of different partners to get a lot of quotes and compare all of them until we have some sort of amount that we need to spend over the next X month. And then kind of comparing that to how much we need to raise to actually make it happen.
So tell us a little bit more about that fundraising and finding investors. I understand you went on the French version of Dragon's Den. So I think for anyone listening from Britain, that'll be quite interesting to listen to. But in terms of general, how do you approach these people and how do you sell your idea so that they feel as passionately as you do?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, it's probably one of the most frustrating, complicated and time-consuming thing you can do. A lot of founders will say this, but it's the thing you want to get rid of as fast as possible, because you don't focus on your business at all. When I go out fundraising, it's a lot of traveling, planning the travels, reaching out to a lot of people. And over time, you get a network of people that you can just go back to, and you can ask for your past investors to give you recommendations about people they know of. But at the very beginning, it's very time consuming. So how do I get about doing this? Well, really, it's again, we got lucky. This first investor came in naturally to us. But if you're not as lucky, and I think, well, luck is kind of forced as well. If we didn't do the Kickstarter, we wouldn't have these people reaching us. If you do something that people like, they will get to you. They will come to you naturally. But of course, you need to put working to actually get new people interested in your venture. So it's a lot of networking, and I hate this advice. I've heard so many people when I got started saying on stage, the most important thing is network. And when you're starting, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I'm starting with zero network, and you're just saying you need to connect with a bunch of people. It's just, first of all, it's unnatural, and second of all, how do you make it happen? And you can't just do this and have a bunch of people in your LinkedIn and people messaging you all the time. It just doesn't work that way. And the harsh truth is, it just takes time. Build something that answers a problem. People will come to you, and over time, people will get to know your brand, who you are. Do some conferences, go to some events, but make it natural. I've seen so many people, try to network unnaturally, shaking hands and talking to everybody, even those that will definitely not be interested in what they do. Target the events where you go. Speak only if you add value to the conversations you're invited to. And then, people will listen and come to you. I think, again, I'm not sure it's the best advice, but the most natural and honest conversations you can have are the most valuable, even for potential investors.
Definitely words of wisdom of someone who's walked the walk. We'd love to get a bit of an insight as to what your plans are personally, and also with Circular, and where you want to be in the next few years.
Sure. So coming back to the kind of the mindset, we definitely want to be the leaders on our market. That's for no doubt at all. We want to be the best brand in terms of smart rings out there, and we want to move into health more and more, and so get into real world benefits for people and prevention. We can prevent a lot of heart issues, a lot of sleep issues that are chronic diseases with a device as small as a smart ring. And this is unknown to the public yet because we're still developing all these features and nobody really does these things. But that's where we're heading, more into, I think, a health and wellness device that answers problems for both B2Cs that are just looking to improve their sleep and overall wellness, but also professionals who are looking for more non-invasive and precise devices. So that's kind of where my mind has always been at, is helping others. It might seem like it's not the case today because we're kind of more of a B2C wellness device, but it has always been the first step into making something that is more groundbreaking, more health-oriented, more useful, and more on the preventive side of things.
We like to ask our guests the same question at the end. If you go back to the start, maybe just when you were in the early stages of developing Circular, what is one thing you do the same? What's one thing you do differently? And what's one thing you tell yourself to motivate yourself?
Wow. For one thing I do the same, that's a complicated one. I think I'd go on with financing the company in the same way as I did. We didn't start with a bunch of money. We started with zero. And the best way for a D2C, a hardware company, to get your first funds is exactly what we did, actually. It's working a bit to make some money and then hoping that you can get grants based off this money, and then doing a crowdfunding campaign, and then not do what we did, which is have all of these issues and raise funds, but really leverage this crowdfunding campaign to raise funds quickly and deliver quickly. But then this is where what I would do differently comes into play. I would definitely talk to people who know about my space way more and listen to them before getting started. If we had the right manufacturing partner from the start, we wouldn't have any delays whatsoever from the start in delivering our first customers. What would I say myself to keep me motivated? So keep going, because in the end, I think the mission is virtuous. I think helping others by providing non-invasive, accessible health tracking data is super valuable to a lot of people. And I definitely see a way we can do it. So I need to keep pushing to be able to obtain this goal. And I know it's going to be complicated based on past experiences, but I also know it's doable. And as long as you know it's doable, then you'll do it if you're motivated.
Amaury, that was honestly fantastic. It was really great listening to you speak. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Okay, perfect. Amaury, very interesting guest. Takeaway wise, let's kick off. And I know you love to tell everyone how much you've written down, so why don't we pick one of your 1,000 bits of information?
Okay, yeah, nice. So I think the biggest message, like overarching message from everything he's doing and what Circular is doing as a company, is to have a lot of patience. He speaks about like he's grinded for a long time. The first one was terrible, but it takes years to get a product that then you're actually really quite proud of. Nothing's going to happen overnight. If you're going to choose the path less chosen of an entrepreneurial journey, you're doing very well if you found a company that's going to be successful within a short period of time. It's actually all about the patience and telling yourself that, you know, if others can do it, why can't I? But why can't I do it better? And just making sure you have that determination to make sure you keep going at it for a long period and get the product you want.
And even he thought it was going to happen in 2 years. And I think it's good. It's definitely good life lesson in anything when you're building it, to build it slowly and well, as opposed to quickly and rushed. I guess that comes on to my second takeaway, which I'd say, which is within the patience, I think being unbelievably planned in everything you do and doing things meticulously is so key. And he spoke about the regret he spoke about in terms of planning manufacturers, planning overall processes, and also planning how you're going to hire a team and the people you need. Clearly so important for what he's doing. And he talks about maybe saving 30% of time if he hadn't made those mistakes in the first place and not really deeply thought out where they wanted to go.
Yeah, very good. I think it was a message he put across right at the start as well. He said, for anyone thinking of like an entrepreneurial journey, make sure you prepare before you change. and make the leap to quit a job or whatever. And I think that links into what you're saying. That was something he's stuck to throughout, is that he's made sure he's prepared for everything and is being doing his due diligence before rushing in. And that comes down to everything, whether it's making sure they don't rush the app and launching that before people have tested it, all the way back to the start where he didn't want to quit his job until he was comfortable, but he was prepared and ready to go. I'll throw out a suggestion then for a third one, which I thought was just an interesting one because of the nature of his business. Quite complicated technical hardware. There's an app involved, and it's something that for a one-man band to do would be literally impossible. And he spoke about it being like finding the perfect mix between certain worlds. So even though he might feel out of depth in certain aspects of it, like the technological side and the app side, the coding side, as long as he understands the goals of what the rest of the team are working for, and he has the brains around him as part of his team that believe in his company, then it doesn't matter that he feels out of depth because he knows they're all striving for the same thing. So if you can get that perfect mix and perfect blend, it's going to increase your chances of success as a business for the future.
Perfect. Yeah, no, actually nothing to add on that. I think that's a spot on takeaway.
So to summarize those, the first one was to have a sheer amount of patience. The second one was to focus on preparation and organization throughout, as long as it takes. And the third one was finding the perfect mix between worlds when you're creating your team to promote your business for the future.
Another great episode. The train keeps rolling on. Promos on you, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, and please do make sure you've rated us and followed us on social media, etc. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.